The Galactic Maintenance Corporation's massive space station floated silently in the void, its gleaming exterior hiding the chaos that lurked within. Station Manager Dubha sat at his desk, his purple-tinted skin reflecting the soft glow of numerous screens as he stared at yet another failed cleaning report. "This is the 17th AI cleaning system that's failed," he muttered, his long fingers drumming against the metallic surface. The latest AI had managed to classify all the station's emergency equipment as trash and try to eject it into space. Before that, another had cleaned so aggressively it had stripped the paint off several corridors. Duha's antenna twitched in frustration as he scrolled through the damage reports. The station, once the pride of the corporation, had become a laughingstock. Sure, things worked, but nothing was where it should be. Crew members spent hours searching for tools that should have been easily accessible. The AI systems, programmed to maintain perfect order, had created their own bizarre organizational systems that made sense only to their digital minds. "Computer, post a new job listing," Duha commanded. "We need different solutions." The computer chimed. "Parameters for the job posting." Duha hesitated. What he was about to do went against every corporate guideline. "Posted across all networks, including primitive species channels." "Warning," the computer responded. "Such action violates Standard Protocol 447B regarding technological advancement requirements for station personnel." "Override." Authorization Duha, Alpha 9. His assistant Kita chose that moment to enter the office, nearly dropping the stack of tablets he was carrying when he heard the override code. "Sir, did I hear correctly? Are we really considering hiring from the non-advanced species list?" Duha watched as Kita's three eyes blinked in sequence, a sure sign of distress among his species. "Look around you, Kita. Our advanced AI systems have failed us 17 times. Perhaps it's time to try something primitive." Kaita placed the tablets on the desk, his scales shifting from their usual blue to a worried gray. "The board won't like this. We'll be laughed at. Hiring a primitive species member for maintenance. It's unheard of." "We're already being laughed at," Duha pointed out. "Yesterday, I spent 3 hours looking for my own office because the AI had reorganized the corridor numbering system to be more efficient. The job posting went live across the galaxy, reaching even the smallest and most technologically backward planets. Duha had kept the requirements simple: experience in maintenance and cleaning, ability to work in zero gravity, and most importantly, understanding of basic organizational systems. 3 days later, as Duha was attempting to locate his missing lunch, the AI had helpfully organized it into the engineering supply closet. His computer chimed with an incoming application. The application came from Earth, a planet so technologically backward they still used combustion engines in some places. The applicant's name was Hejin, and his credentials were unusual. 20 years of experience as head custodian for orbital stations. Kita read aloud, his tone skeptical. "Manual cleaning techniques. Traditional organizational methods. Sir, they still use physical tools to clean. This is absurd." But Duha was reading deeper into the application. Hejin had included testimonials from his previous employers, all praising his ability to maintain order in complex environments. More importantly, there were 0 incidents of equipment being accidentally ejected into space. "Look at these efficiency ratings," Duha said, pointing to a chart. His stations maintained 98% organization rates using nothing but manual methods. "But sir, he's human." Kita practically whispered the word, as if it were something shameful. "They haven't even achieved full solar system colonization yet." Duha looked around his office, where the AI had helpfully organized all his documents by analyzing their molecular composition rather than their content. "Maybe that's exactly what we need. Someone who understands the basics of cleaning and organization without overcomplicated AI protocols." The decision wasn't easy. The board would certainly object. Other station managers would mock them. and there was no guarantee this primitive approach would work. But as Duha sent the acceptance notice to Earth, he felt a glimmer of hope. "Send He-Jin the standard contract," he told Kita. "And perhaps we should warn the crew. This will be quite an adjustment for everyone." Kite's scales had now shifted to a pale yellow of resignation. "Yes, sir. Should I also inform them to expect physical cleaning implements?" "Yes," Duha said, finally locating his lunch behind a panel the AI had designated as optimal nutrient storage location. "And Kita, let's hope this human knows what he's doing. Because if this fails, we'll both be cleaning waste processors on some outer rim mining station." As the acceptance message traveled through space toward Earth, neither Duha nor Kita could have predicted just how much their lives, and their perfectly chaotic station, were about to change. They had just hired the galaxy's first human janitor, and nothing would ever be the same again. The pristine-looking airlock doors of Stellar Point 7 slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a sight that made several alien crew members stop and stare. He-Jin stood there, a simple duffel bag slung over his shoulder, wearing what appeared to be a plain gray maintenance uniform from Earth. No advanced tech, no AI interfaces, not even a basic neural implant. "Welcome aboard," Station Manager Duha said, trying to hide his uncertainty. "I trust your journey was adequate." He-Jin smiled, his eyes already scanning the airlock chamber with the focused gaze of someone who had spent decades noticing things others missed. He reached out and ran his finger along a wall that appeared spotless to everyone else. The finger came back with a thin film of residue. "Your filtration systems are working overtime," he said, rubbing the residue between his thumb and finger. "They're trying to compensate for inefficient cleaning protocols." Keita, standing beside Duha, made a sound that might have been a scoff. "Our systems are top of the line. They maintain optimal cleanliness through advanced particle manipulation. And..." He-Jin pulled a simple white cloth from his pocket and wiped it across another section of wall. The cloth came away gray. "Your systems are just moving dirt around, not removing it. And these storage patterns..." He gestured to the seemingly organized cargo containers lining the walls. "They're arranged based on dirt pattern recognition." "Of course," Duha replied, antenna twitching nervously. "It's the most advanced organizational system in the galaxy. The AI tracks every item by its unique particle signature." He-Jin unzipped his duffel bag and pulled out what looked like ancient artifacts to the alien crew: a mop, some cleaning cloths, and various bottles of cleaning solutions. "That's your first problem. You're trying to find things by looking for their dirt. What happens when something is actually clean?" The question hung in the air as He-Jin got to work. The alien crew gathered at a safe distance, watching with a mixture of horror and fascination as he began cleaning the primary corridor by hand. Some recorded the primitive display on their neural interfaces, while others whispered about the possible mental instability of their new human colleague. "He's spreading dihydrogen monoxide on the floors." One junior engineer gasped, their scales turning a pale shade of green. "It's just water," He-Jin called out without looking up from his work. "With a bit of soap. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways." As the hours passed, something strange began to happen. The corridor, which had always registered as adequately maintained on the station's sensors, started to take on a different kind of clean. It wasn't just the absence of dirt. There was a shine, a freshness that none of the AI systems had ever achieved. By the end of his first shift, He-Jin had cleaned only one corridor, but it was unlike anything the station had ever seen. The floors gleamed, the walls sparkled, and every surface reflected light like new. The only problem was that the station's sensors couldn't detect any of it. "This is impossible," Kita muttered, staring at his diagnostic tablet. "According to our sensors, the corridor doesn't exist anymore. It's too clean. There are no particle traces for the system to detect." He-Jin wiped his forehead with a cloth and smiled. Maybe it's time to stop relying so much on sensors and start using these. He pointed to his eyes. The news spread quickly through the station. Crew members from all departments found excuses to pass through the cleaned corridor, marveling at its condition. Some brave souls even touched the walls, amazed by the smooth, truly clean surface. But how will we find anything? Duha asked, genuine concern in his voice. Our entire inventory system relies on tracking dirt patterns. He-Jin pulled a roll of simple adhesive labels from his bag. We'll start with these. Sometimes the simplest solution is the best solution. As He-Jin packed up his cleaning supplies for the day, he could hear the confused chatter of the alien crew. They were simultaneously impressed and terrified by what they'd witnessed. Their advanced AI systems, designed to maintain perfect order through complex algorithms and particle manipulation, had been outperformed by a human with a mop and some soap. Tomorrow, He-Jin announced to Duha, we'll tackle the mess hall, and maybe I can show your crew that there's more to cleanliness than just programming it. Duha watched the human walk away, noticed how even his footsteps seemed to leave the floor cleaner than before. The station manager's antenna twitched thoughtfully as he realized that hiring this primitive species member might not have been such a mistake after all. Though as he tried to use his neural interface to locate his office and found that the sensors couldn't detect that entire section of the station anymore, he wondered just what other changes this human janitor would bring to their perfectly chaotic world. Panic spread through the bridge of Stellar Point 7 like a solar flare. Kite's voice bounced off the spotless walls as he searched frantically for the quantum stabilizer. The situation had reached critical levels, not because of any real emergency, but because no one could find anything anymore. This is impossible. Kite's three eyes blinked rapidly in sequence, a sign of extreme distress. The quantum stabilizer should be giving off at least some particle signature. Nothing can be this clean. The bridge crew, usually a model of efficiency, had devolved into chaos. Officers waved their sensor devices uselessly at pristine surfaces, while others opened and closed storage compartments with increasing desperation. Their advanced technology, rendered useless by simple cleanliness, might as well have been children's toys. Sunma, the chief engineer, frantically adjusted her sensor settings for the 20th time. Her antenna, usually still and professional, twitched so violently it looked like it might fall off. The calibration must be wrong. Everything's wrong. How can we run a space station if we can't detect anything? He-Jin had been watching this scene unfold from his cleaning station in the corner, calmly wiping down his mop. He hadn't said anything for the past 10 minutes, letting the crew work through their panic. Finally, he set down his cleaning supplies and walked over to a storage unit that looked identical to all the others, except for one small detail: a handwritten label. "The quantum stabilizer," he said, opening the compartment and pulling out the device, "is exactly where it should be. Third shelf, second compartment, clearly labeled and categorized." He held up the crucial piece of equipment, which gleamed like new under the bridge's lights. The crew stared in stunned silence. Sunma's antenna froze mid-twitch. But how?" Kita stammered. "Our sensors couldn't detect it. The particle recognition systems failed. The molecular tracking array showed nothing." He-Jin placed the quantum stabilizer in Kita's hands. "You're all so used to letting your technology find things for you. You've forgotten how to look with your own eyes. See this?" He pointed to the neat label on the storage compartment. "No AI required. Just simple organization." A young officer in the back raised her hand tentatively. "But what happens if the labels fall off?" "They won't," He-Jin replied, "because I used proper adhesive. And even if they did, there's a backup system." He pulled out a small book from his pocket. "It's called an inventory log. We write down where everything is." The horror on the crew's faces at the mention of physical writing was almost comical. Sunma looked like she might faint. "Write? With our hands, like primitives," someone whispered. He-Jin walked over to a terminal and pulled up the station's old organizational protocols. "Look at this." Your eye was organizing things based on their atomic weight, usage frequency, and dirt particle signatures. Is that really easier than just putting things where they make sense and labeling them? The crew looked at the complex algorithms scrolling across the screen, then at the simple label on the storage compartment. Slowly, understanding began to dawn on their faces. "But what about emergencies?" Kitay asked. "When we need to find something quickly." Hajin gestured around the bridge. "What's quicker? Scanning for particle signatures that don't exist anymore because everything's clean, or reading a label that tells you exactly where something is." Sunma stepped forward, her engineering mind starting to grasp the logic. It's like going back to basics," she said slowly. "But sometimes basics work better." "Exactly," Heijin smiled. "Your technology is amazing, but you've become so dependent on it that you've forgotten the simple solutions. Sometimes you don't need an AI to tell you where something is. Sometimes you just need to open your eyes and read a label." Over the next hour, Hojin showed the crew his organizational system. Everything had its place, clearly marked and logically arranged. Emergency equipment was stored where it would be needed most. Frequently used items were placed at easy-to-reach heights. It was so simple that at first, the crew couldn't believe it would work. "But how will we find things in the dark?" one officer asked. Heijin pulled out something from his pocket that made several crew members gasp. "This," he said, holding up a small flashlight, "is called a backup plan." As the shift ended, the bridge crew had started to adapt to their new reality. Some had even begun making their own labels, though their handwriting was shaky and uncertain. Kita stood with Heijin, watching as officers actually walked to storage compartments instead of relying on their neural interfaces to locate equipment. "I still don't fully understand," Kitay admitted, "but I haven't seen the bridge run this smoothly in years." Heijin nodded, picking up his cleaning supplies. "Sometimes the best technology is no technology at all. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go label the maintenance bay. I heard someone spent 3 hours yesterday looking for a wrench." As he left, the bridge crew watched him go with a new respect. Perhaps these humans weren't as primitive as they had thought. After all, any species that could make things so clean that advanced sensors couldn't detect them clearly knew something about efficiency that the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. The mess hall of Stellar Point 7 had become an unlikely classroom. During off-peak hours, aliens from every department gathered to watch the Jinn demonstrate what he called basic cleaning techniques. Today, the room was packed with curious onlookers, their various appendages and sensory organs all focused on the human janitor. Hajin stood at the front of the room, surrounded by cleaning supplies that most of the crew had never seen before. To them, these simple tools looked like artifacts from an ancient civilization. A young maintenance worker named Jiho sat in the front row, his scales shifting through shades of blue and green with excitement. "Today," Hojin announced, holding up a spray bottle, "we're going to learn about something we humans call spring cleaning." He spritzed some solution onto a nearby table, making several aliens jump back in surprise. "Is that the dihydrogen monoxide solution again?" Jiho asked, leaning forward with interest. His scales rippled with a pattern that indicated intense curiosity. "Just water and vinegar," Hajin explained, wiping the table with a cloth. "Natural cleaning agents that have been used on Earth for centuries." The crowd murmured in amazement as the table began to shine. One alien recorded the entire process with their neural interface, while others took notes on their data pads. "But what is this spring cleaning you mentioned?" asked an engineer from the back, their antenna quivering with interest. Hajin smiled, remembering his grandmother's annual cleaning rituals. On Earth, when winter ends and spring begins, many humans clean their entire living space from top to bottom. Everything gets cleaned, organized, and refreshed. Everything. Jiho's scales turned a pale yellow of disbelief. "At once, the entire living space." "That's right," Hojin nodded. demonstrating how to properly fold cleaning cloths. We move furniture, clean behind things, organize closets, throw out what we don't need anymore. It's a fresh start. The aliens exchange shocked looks. The concept of cleaning everything at once seemed both terrifying and fascinating to them. Their AI systems had always handled cleaning in calculated, precise intervals. "But why wait for this spring?" asked a science officer. "Why not let automated systems clean continuously?" He-Jin pulled out a drawer of eating utensils that had been organized by their molecular composition. "Look at this," he said, dumping everything onto a table. Several aliens gasped at such deliberate chaos. "Now watch," he continued, sorting the utensils by type and size. "Your eye organizes things based on complex data. But sometimes simpler is better. Forks with forks, spoons with spoons, everything where you can easily find it." Jai-Ho's scales shifted to a deep purple of understanding. "It's logical," he admitted, watching He-Jin create neat, ordered rows. "But you said spring cleaning is therapeutic. What does that mean?" He-Jin paused, considering how to explain this concept to beings who had never done physical cleaning. "It feels good," he finally said. "There's satisfaction in making things clean with your own hands. It gives you time to think, to process things. And when you're done, seeing everything clean and organized, it brings peace." The aliens watched in fascination as He-Jin continued his demonstration, showing them how to properly wipe surfaces, organize storage areas, and maintain order without relying on technology. Some brave souls even volunteered to try cleaning themselves, their movements awkward but enthusiastic. "I feel different," Jai-Ho said after successfully cleaning a table by hand. His scales had taken on a new pattern, one that indicated deep satisfaction. "Like I've accomplished something real." The lesson extended beyond its scheduled time as more crew members arrived to watch and learn. He-Jin taught them about the importance of regular maintenance, the satisfaction of physical work, and the simple joy of creating order from chaos. "Tomorrow," He-Jin announced as the session wound down, "we'll learn about the art of sweeping. And maybe, if you're ready, I'll introduce you to the concept of dusting." As the crowd dispersed, discussing this strange new knowledge among themselves, Jai-Ho stayed behind to help He-Jin clean up the demonstration areas. His scales had settled into a steady blue of contentment. "He-Jin," he said, carefully folding a cleaning cloth the way he'd been shown, "I think I understand now why humans clean this way. It's not just about removing dirt, is it?" He-Jin smiled, watching as other crew members began organizing their own work areas without being asked. "No, Jai-Ho, it's not. Sometimes the simplest actions can bring the greatest satisfaction. That's something your AI systems never understood." As they finished cleaning the mess hall, the station's sensors once again failed to detect the newly spotless surfaces. But for the first time, nobody seemed to mind. They were too busy experiencing the strange new feeling of accomplishment that came from cleaning something with their own hands. The cultural evolution had begun, and it started with a simple bottle of vinegar and water. The arrival of Senior Inspector Yuri sent ripples of anxiety through Stellar Point 7. Her ceremonial robes, shimmering with embedded sensor arrays, swept majestically behind her as she materialized on the transport pad. Station Manager Duha's antenna nearly tied itself in knots as he rushed to greet her. "Welcome, Senior Inspector," Duha said, bowing deeply. "We weren't expecting your inspection for another 3 cycles." Yuri's multifaceted eyes narrowed as she activated her scanning equipment. Unexpected inspections often reveal the truest picture of a station's operations. She paused, frowning at her readings. "How curious. According to my scans, this transportation bay doesn't exist." Duha exchanged nervous glances with Kita, who had also come to greet the inspector. They both knew exactly why the scanners were malfunctioning. The Jinn had cleaned this area yesterday. "About that," Duha began, but Yuri was already moving forward, her sophisticated scanning device sweeping back and forth. "Impossible," she muttered, stopping abruptly in the corridor. "According to these readings, your entire station is empty. Yet I can clearly see everything with my own eyes." She reached out and touched a wall, her sensor-laden fingers detecting nothing but pristine cleanliness. At that moment, He-Jin rounded the corner, pushing his cleaning cart. He stopped when he saw the gathering, immediately noting the inspector's official robes. "Ah," Yuri said, her eyes focusing on the human. "You must be the primitive cleaning specialist I've heard rumors about." He-Jin smiled and nodded respectfully. "Just a janitor, ma'am. Would you like to see how we keep the station clean?" Yuri's professional demeanor cracked slightly, revealing genuine curiosity. "Please, I must understand why my most advanced scanning equipment cannot detect any of your station's infrastructure." What followed was unlike any inspection in the history of the Galactic Maintenance Corporation. He-Jin led Yuri through the station, explaining his methods while she recorded everything with increasing fascination. "You see," he explained, showing her a perfectly organized storage room, when everything has a proper place and is actually clean. Not just sensor clean, but really clean. You don't need complex systems to find things. Yuri ran her scanning device over a shelf of tools. "But how do you track inventory without particle signatures?" He-Jin handed her a simple clipboard with a handwritten inventory sheet. "We count them, and we write it down." The inspector's hands trembled slightly as she held the primitive recording device. "Physical documentation, written by hand." Her voice held a mixture of horror and intrigue. They moved through the station, with He-Jin demonstrating various cleaning techniques. Yuri watched in amazement as he used simple soap and water to achieve levels of cleanliness that the most advanced AI systems had never managed. "Your cleaning methods have rendered our standard inspection protocols useless," Yuri noted, attempting to scan a spotless corridor for the third time. "This is unprecedented." In the mess hall, she witnessed crew members cleaning their own areas after meals, using the techniques He-Jin had taught them. Her multifaceted eyes widened as she saw Jeho, his scales glowing with pride, carefully wiping down tables without any technological assistance. "They're doing it voluntarily?" she asked, incredulous. "They find it satisfying," He-Jin explained. "Sometimes the simple act of making something clean with your own hands can be rewarding." By the end of the inspection, Yuri had filled several data crystals with observations and had even tried cleaning a small area herself. Her usually pristine robes were slightly dampened from the experience, but her eyes shone with excitement. "This is remarkable," she declared in the final meeting. "Your station has achieved cleanliness levels that our sensors cannot even measure, and your crew's morale appears to have improved significantly." Duha's antenna perked up hopefully. "Then we passed the inspection." Yuri looked down at her useless scanning device, then at her handwritten notes, her first ever physical documentation. "Pass. Station Manager, I'm recommending your maintenance protocols for galaxy-wide implementation." The room fell silent. He-Jin continued calmly mopping in the corner, hiding a small smile. But Kita spoke up. "What about the sensor readings? How will other stations function if their equipment can't detect anything?" Yuri stood, brushing off her robes. "Perhaps it's time we all learn to rely a little less on our sensors and a little more on our natural senses. Sometimes the most advanced solution is the simplest one." As she prepared to leave, Yuri paused beside He-Jin's cleaning cart. "I never thought I would say this to a member of a primitive species, but thank you for teaching us how to see cleanliness with our own eyes." After she departed, the station crew gathered in the newly spotless main hall, celebrating their unexpected success. Jeho's scales had turned a brilliant shade of proud gold, while Duha's antenna danced with relief. He-Jin simply picked up his mop and moved on to the next area. After all, there was always something that needed cleaning, even if the sensors couldn't detect it. The first warning came as a slight tremor through Stellar Point 7's hull. The quantum storm, a massive disturbance in spacetime, approached faster than anyone had expected. Warning lights flashed across every terminal as the station's sensors began to malfunction. Quantum interference detected. Kita shouted from his station. All particle tracking systems are failing. Duha's antenna whipped back and forth as he tried to maintain order. The bridge crew scrambled to access emergency protocols, but their neural interfaces sparked and fizzled under the quantum storm's influence. Screens flickered with static, and the AI system's voice became a garbled mess. "We can't locate the emergency equipment," Sunmai called out, her fingers dancing uselessly over dead sensors. "The quantum interference is blocking all particle signatures." The station shuddered again, harder this time. In the chaos, Ho Jin stepped out of a maintenance shaft, where he'd been teaching Jaho the proper way to clean air filters. Taking in the scene of panic, he set down his cleaning supplies and straightened his uniform. "Everyone stop." He-Jin's voice cut through the chaos like a laser beam. The crew froze, their various appendages and sensory organs turning toward him. "The emergency supplies are in the red cabinets, clearly labeled in every section. Just like we practiced." Duha watched in amazement as the crew's panic transformed into focused action. They'd spent weeks mocking He-Jin's primitive organizational system, but now, with their technology failing, it was their only hope. "Engineering team," He-Jin continued calmly. "Quantum stabilizers are in cabinet red 3, right side, third shelf. Medical team, emergency kits are in cabinet red 1, clearly marked with the medical symbol I showed you last week." The crews moved with surprising efficiency, no longer waiting for their neural interfaces to guide them. Jiho's scales flickered with determination as he led a team to retrieve emergency supplies, his eyes finding the labeled cabinets instantly. Another violent shake rocked the station. Sparks flew from overloaded circuits, and the artificial gravity flickered. But instead of chaos, there was coordination. Crew members called out to each other, using their eyes and voices rather than technology. "Stabilizer teams, remember the maintenance routes we cleaned last week?" He-Jin shouted over the noise. "Follow the green lines we painted on the floors. They'll lead you to the quantum core." Duha couldn't believe what he was seeing. His crew, trained on the most advanced technology in the galaxy, was functioning better using simple visual markers and physical labels than they ever had with their sophisticated systems. "He-Jin," Sunlight called out, clutching a quantum stabilizer. "The core access is sealed. We can't get sensor confirmation to open it." "Manual override," Ho-Jin replied, already moving toward the core. "Remember the maintenance training." Red lever behind the panel marked emergency access, just like we practiced during cleaning drills. The quantum storm intensified, warping space-time around the station. But inside, the crew moved with practiced precision. They'd spent months learning He-Jin's organizational systems, often complaining about having to memorize physical locations instead of relying on their neural interfaces. Now, that knowledge was saving their lives. "Status report," Duha called out, his antenna quivering with nervous energy. "Quantum stabilizers deployed," came the response from engineering. "Core temperature dropping. Medical teams in position. All emergency systems responding." The storm raged for another 20 minutes, but the station held. When the last tremors subsided and the neural interfaces slowly flickered back to life, Duha looked around his bridge with new appreciation. Not a single crew member had been seriously injured. No critical systems had failed. The station had survived one of the worst quantum storms in recent history. "How?" Kite asked, still staring at his rebooting sensors. "How did we function so well without any technological assistance?" He-Jin, who had returned to quietly cleaning scorch marks off the walls, looked up. "Because you learned to trust your eyes and your hands. Sometimes the old ways are the most reliable." Later, during the damage assessment, Duha found He-Jin in a maintenance corridor, teaching more crew members how to recognize different emergency access panels by touch. "You saved us today," Duha said simply. The Jinn shook his head. "They saved themselves. I just showed them how to see what was already there." As news of Stellar Point 7's successful handling of the quantum storm spread through the galaxy, other stations began requesting information about their emergency protocols. Duha had to suppress a laugh when he realized he'd be sending them instructions about color coding and proper labeling techniques. The next day, Jin found his cleaning supplies surrounded by eager crew members, all wanting to learn more about his primitive but effective methods. Even Yuri sent a message requesting detailed documentation of their organizational systems, handwritten, of course. As he showed a group of engineers the proper way to arrange tools in a way that could be found by touch alone, Jin smiled. Sometimes, the universe needed a reminder that the simplest solutions were often the best ones, even in the most advanced civilizations. The Grand Lecture Hall of the Galactic Maintenance Corporation's central training facility buzzed with activity. Representatives from 12 different alien species filled the seats, their various appendages clutching notepads and simple writing tools, a sight unthinkable just 6 months ago. At the front of the room, Jin stood beside a simple cleaning cart, his worn uniform now bearing the prestigious insignia of Chief Maintenance Instructor. Duha and Kita sat in the back row, their expressions radiating pride. 6 months ago, hiring a human janitor had seemed like career suicide. Now they were being hailed as visionaries who had revolutionized space station maintenance across the galaxy. "Welcome to Basic Cleaning Techniques 101. Jin began, picking up a mop. Several translator devices hummed as they converted his words into dozen different languages. Today, we'll learn why cleaning isn't just about removing dirt. It's about creating order and understanding. In the audience, a crystalline being raised what appeared to be an arm. But why can't we just program the AI to understand cleaning better? Jin smiled, having heard this question countless times before. He walked over to a deliberately dusty table. Watch, he said, wiping half the table with a damp cloth. What do you see? The audience leaned forward, their various sensory organs focusing on the contrast between clean and dirty. A wave of understanding rippled through the room. You see, Jin continued, cleaning isn't just about achieving a certain level of particle removal. It's about caring for your environment, understanding your space, and maintaining order in a way that makes sense to living beings, not just machines. As he demonstrated basic cleaning techniques, Jin noticed several aliens taking physical notes, something that would have been unthinkable before. The quantum storm incident had changed everything, proving that sometimes the simplest solutions were the most reliable. Remember, he said, showing them how to properly fold a cleaning cloth. Technology can fail. Sensors can malfunction. But if you know how to clean and organize properly, you'll never be lost. In the back row, Kita's 3 eyes blinked in sequence as he remembered his own journey from skeptic to believer. Beside him, Duha's antenna swayed gently with satisfaction. The lecture continued with practical demonstrations. Jin taught them about the importance of consistent organization, proper labeling, and the satisfaction of manual work. He showed them how to create cleaning schedules that didn't rely on AI oversight, and how to maintain order without depending on particle tracking. But what about efficiency? Asked a newer student, their scales shifting nervously. Surely AI systems are faster. Speed isn't everything. Jin replied, demonstrating how to properly sweep a floor. What good is speed if you can't find anything afterward because it's too clean for your sensors? Laughter rippled through the room. By now, the too clean to detect problem had become a running joke throughout the galaxy. Some stations had even started intentionally leaving small amounts of dust in crucial areas just so their sensors could function. Near the end of the session, Jin revealed his most controversial technique, the art of strategic imperfection. Sometimes, he explained, leaving a small, controlled amount of dirt can actually help maintain order. It gives your sensors something to track, while still keeping the environment clean and functional. This concept had initially scandalized the Galactic Maintenance Corporation, but after numerous studies proved its effectiveness, it had become standard protocol. Even Yuri, the once skeptical senior inspector, now carried a small bottle of sensor-friendly dust for emergencies. As the class ended, Ho-Jin watched his students practice with their cleaning supplies, each finding their own way to adapt human cleaning techniques to their unique physiologies. Some used tentacles to hold mops, others manipulated cleaning cloths with telekinesis, but all of them understood the fundamental principle. Sometimes the simplest solution was the best. Duha and Kite approached him after the lecture. "The board is talking about implementing your methods across all sectors," Duha said, his antenna quivering with excitement. Ho-Jin nodded, already planning his next lesson. He'd recently begun experimenting with teaching the aliens about the concept of spring cleaning on a galactic scale. As they left the lecture hall, Ho-Jin paused to wipe a smudge from the wall, but not too thoroughly. After all, those sensor-dependent navigation systems still needed something to track. Sometimes, he reflected, the best way to maintain order was to leave just a little bit of chaos. The revolution in space station maintenance had started with a simple mop and bucket, but it had grown into something much more, a reminder that even in the most advanced civilization, there was still room for the wisdom of simpler times. And if anyone noticed that Ho-Jin occasionally left strategic smudges near important doorways, well, that was just part of the art of galactic janitorial science.